Hey, there's people here. Hey, hey, look at me going live. Oh, and there's waves. Oh, this is very fancy. Y'all, this is my first IG live in real life. So, appreciate y'all rocking with me as I figure it out. Okay, oh, I see it's happening. Oh, thanks, Ashley. Thanks, Ashley. Oh, here we go. Okay, view. Did I do it? I think I did it. I think we're almost there.
We are here.
Yes. Okay, let's see. How do I put that move? I'm so excited. You are my first IG live.
Hey, I love it. I love that it's your first IG Live. So when I did my first one, I was terrified, but you're in here dancing. You like got it together.
I was like, I was just be me by myself for a minute, and yeah, a little, song and dance in the background always makes folks happy.
I love it. It's so good to see you.
It's good to see you. I saw you on Bevy's IG live this weekend.
So let me tell
Celebrating your
you.
birthday month.
So the thing that's so funny is like I don't go out of the house that much because of New York. It was so crazy,
Yeah.
and so my friends are like, "Child, you got to come out of the house." So a friend of mine took me to lunch for my birthday. And then Bevy happened to be there with our friend Amy at the restaurant, which is so crazy, outdoor restaurant. So I got the best of both worlds. I had lunch with my friend Sean, and then I had drinks with Bevy and Amy. So it was perfect.
Yes, yes. Well, I'm excited to talk to you. I think this is, in a pre-COVID world, we would have had drinks together by now. We would have kikied it up in person.
Yeah.
But I think this is our first time we're really being able to talk like this. And so I'm really excited and grateful that you spending some time with us today.
Well, thank you for having me. I love Black AIDS Institute, so it's an honor.
Yes, yes, I'm excited. I'm always on Native Sons IG lives, so I'm good at watching them. I've been at y'all's events. You see me partying in the background.
Right.
When you guys had an event, I think a few months ago, and I was all
Mhm.
up in there, especially for the dance part. So I'm excited, to talk to you today and really just have a conversation around HIV, AIDS,
Mhm.
around Black gay men, bisexual men,
Yeah.
Black same gender loving queer men,
Mhm.
and being able
All
to
the
hold
things.
all the things, being able to hold some space with you today. You are, so I knew who you were before. We've been in the same spaces together, but
Yeah.
I did my whole Google research on you.
Okay. What's the Google machine say?
It says that you are, I knew how talented you were and really kind of the visionary that you are. But, I learned so much more about all the various spaces that you've developed
Mhm.
and that you've created, particularly for Black queer men. And,
Yes.
I think particularly for now and where we're at, a little over a week from Election Day, I would love
Mhm.
to just kind of start with hearing, what brings you joy, what keeps you
Mhm.
motivated right now?
That is such a great question. What brings me joy? So I think as I look back to the last 8 months, what has brought me joy is connecting with people like you, people who I know and we're in the same rooms and we're adjacent, but we never get to really talk.
Yeah.
And even with some of my friends, there's certain friends I speak to every single day religiously. We text good morning to each other.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And that brings me joy to know that someone out there cares. And then also that we can have these really cool, thoughtful, provocative conversations that are urgent to what's happening in the world right now. And I feel like in the old way of living, we were always so busy. There's so much going on. We're traveling,
Yeah.
meetings, dinners, working, and we didn't take time for ourselves. And I think we're being forced to take time for ourselves, or we're being forced to have conversations about solutions.
Yeah, yeah. One of the things that I think that you do so beautifully, and I think has been, a part of this movement that we're currently seeing, right? This belief, and I think some other folks are starting to believe us that all Black lives matter,
Yes.
and this bringing in art into activism,
Mm.
and really how they really kind of are the same coin. And I think you do that so beautifully with Native
Oh,
Son,
thank
with the
you.
imagery that you put up, with the stories that you guys tell, in other work that you do. This is kind of a huge part of your work, really, art being a form of activism. And, how do you see that? I mean, talk to me a little bit more about how you use art and activism together.
That is such a beautiful question. I was born with like artistic abilities and art on me. When I was in kindergarten, I won third place at an art fair at my elementary school, and I was like, "That's it, let's go, I got this." And it was crazy because I was so focused on this project. Like my parents were like, "Okay," and my mother was more creative. My father was an architectural engineer,
Mm.
and then my mother, they did everything. They're like real Black people, like they do 80 jobs.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they both weren't allowed to be creative when they were growing up. So my mother had her, was a child music prodigy playing the piano.
Oh, wow.
And she always would talk to my grandparents about why didn't you support that if I was so gifted? But they were like, you had to be practical. And so my father was an architectural engineer, and it was kind of the same thing. So I was supported, they supported me being creative, and I'm so grateful. I'm a great example of like my parents didn't mess me up and let me tape 1,000 photo magazine pictures and stuff on the walls. My mother would tell people I would draw and crayon like upside down from the bed. And so that is my form. That's one of my forms of expression is art, photography, creativity. And I, I, the magazine photos on my wall growing up, I always tell people was like almost like a mood board for my life
Mm.
because I would take whatever Black people I saw in any magazine, if it was Time magazine, if it was Ebony, if it was Jet, if it was Interview magazine, if it was the New York Times, I would tear it out if it spoke to me and put it on my wall. And it was this huge collage. And
Mm.
this was obviously, I'm in high school then. So this was before vision boards. But what I loved is I was tearing out pictures of Black people who were politicians, who were in entertainment, who were artists, who were creatives, who were changing how we saw ourselves as Black people. And so it's just kind of a God universe thing, like. But I've learned to be able to use that in media and now in activism as a form of expression that it draws people in. It makes people, it's about seeing ourselves in a brighter, bolder, Black future light versus being like, y'all are marginalized, y'all stay over there. No, I see us as rock stars. I see
Mhm.
us as superstars. And so I guess that's my superpower.
It is a superpower. And I think, I have the privilege of being able to work with young Black gay men all the time. And
Mm-hmm.
when they see spaces like that, when there's a space to see the future, when there's a space to see what can be with love and support, it is life changing, and I think that's such a beautiful piece of how art and activism go together, is
Yeah.
that I think art can give, and creativity gives us that future to look forward to and really to fight for, and to live into. And so it's a beautiful space. I mean, you guys' work is gorgeous, and just looking
Mm-hmm.
at it and like, seeing the kisses and the relationships and the hugs and the love, I think is so beautiful. I know a little bit
Mm-hmm.
about your story of coming out to your family, and some of the challenges that you had.
Mm-hmm.
Is that the nice way to say it?
Ciao. Thank God
Uh,
for therapy.
But I'd love to hear, if you don't mind sharing with us a little bit more about that. People sometimes ask me, Raniyah, as a cis Black woman who is HIV negative, how are you doing this work? And, for me, I can't think of anything that's more beautiful than to make sure that we are supporting, at least for me, especially as a Black mother, a mother of Black boys, like my children are precious. And there was a time, when we didn't get to have our children. And I want to support them and love them however I can. And, I know that's different, right? I think that I know that not all folks feel like that. So talk a little bit about kind of your coming out story and that experience.
So my parents, were also very bougie, and
East Coast bougie,
Midwest bougie.
Midwest bougie. Okay.
So like almost like in many ways to me the real deal, because in the Midwest, like white supremacy is real, but it is super like covered up, and there is this really great community of Black strivers who, went to Black colleges, worked really hard, got really good jobs, but literally were the first and the only ones in those spaces. And they figured out a way to get through. So my parents were very much that. My father's from St. Croix in the Virgin Islands. My mother's from Des Moines, Iowa. So it's like West Indian work ethic and then Midwest work ethic. So we were always working and going to church. But my parents were very social, and they were very in the community. My mother was in like 20-something organizations, civic, social, you name it. If a disaster happened, my mother was the first one at DHL with a package of canned goods, of clothing and soft goods, all that stuff, and worked at a soup kitchen, like all this stuff while being glamorous and fabulous. And, she had an ideal of what she wanted for her Black family, coming of age at a time where she was told that she would be more successful. It's a shame that she's brown skinned. And so that's the world she grew up in. So, my mother also had her doctorate in sociology. So I thought she was going to be cooler about the fact that I was gender nonconforming, but she was not, because she wanted a very specific type of ideal of what a Black family looked like to her. And, it was rough, like Bible scriptures, they were going to cut me off and send me everything from the house, and what would people say? And, it was rough. I'm grateful for my older brother, Eric, because he challenged both of us, my parents and myself, that this is a journey and a process, and everyone needed to understand both sides. And in that understanding both sides, be compassionate and learned and open to differences. So those first couple of Thanksgivings were like, yeah.
How old were you?
I came out, I had just moved to New York. I had just graduated from Columbia Journalism School. So I came out at like 22. And I came out because I got tired of lying to my parents about dating these women who were actually just like good girlfriends who were really fierce, fierce Black women that I loved hanging out with. But like, I needed a beard. And so I did it, and it was worse than I had ever imagined it would be.
Yeah.
And it's hard, right? Like, I've heard a lot of my friends are like, oh, it's not that bad. Like, for me, it was the worst case scenario. And just to hear my mother, like this blood curdling, bawling and crying, and like, and reading scriptures, that I was like, oh man, maybe I'm not supposed to do this. And it took a really long time. I'm grateful for therapy. I'm grateful that my parents didn't give up on me and were willing to do the work. And then I had to do a lot of work. And, you know, I knew we would be okay when I was featured in this like New York Magazine article about queer people of note. And I said, "Oh, have you seen this? I wanted to show you something. I'm really proud of it." She's like, "Oh, child, I already saw that." One of my girlfriends from, you know, the Links or something showed it to me. And that's when I knew she had turned a corner, because I was still doing all the things she wanted from her son. I just happen to like men.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. You still got the bougie part there, so
Oh,
it
I
helped
got
out.
bougie. Damn. Damn. Yeah, and Black excellence and,
Yeah.
you know, community servant and, you know, spiritual, like all the things she wanted. So it was hard. And then the second hardest thing, which I'm probably jumping the gun, um, was coming out about my HIV status.
Yeah.
And that was hard for me personally to deal with, just to process, because I felt like I left myself down. I felt like I knew better. I felt like I, you know, made sure there were stories and vibe because of the Black AIDS Institute about HIV and AIDS in the Black community as it affected Black gay men, as it affected Black straight women, and DL culture and all the things. And I'm like, you knew better, but you're human.
Mm-hmm.
And so I didn't even go get tested. I got sick, and it's weird because it's around this time of the year. And I got sick. And then I was like, what's wrong? I thought I had swine flu or something. And then, but it lasted longer and it was like really bad. And I was like, being a typical Black man, like, not, oh, it's gonna pass. And it wasn't passing. And I was losing weight and I couldn't eat solid food for like a month. It was like crazy. And I just hid up in my apartment and worked from home. And then when I went back to the office, everyone was like, you lost a lot of weight. Are you okay? And I was like, no, I feel great now. The next year at the exact same time, I got sick again. And one of my really good friends who had been positive for a while was like, I am taking you to get tested. And I tried to fight him. I was like, no, I'm good. He was like, I saw a whole generation disappear. You have to go get tested. And so he took me to get tested, and I found out I was positive, and I was like crushed. And it took a long time for me to come to terms with it. It took a long time for me to accept it. And then I think I carried so much shame about it, because it was affecting so many parts of my life. Like the great thing, silver lining, is that because so many Black gay men have HIV and live with AIDS, when I tell you I had the best support system, people were like, this is how you should do your cocktail. You should do it at night. No, do it in the morning. You should do this. Okay, now you're going to have to work out more. Okay, now you need to do this. It's all these things. And they really held me down in a way. Because also at this point, I'm a public figure. So I am gagging. I am like, I have HIV. I am editor-in-chief. Well, I wasn't editor. I was fashion director. But then I became editor-in-chief. And I was carrying this gigantic boulder that I was trying to hide. And still doing all the advocacy work.
Around HIV.
Yeah, but
Black gay men.
And our beloved Phil Wilson was the one at a men's retreat and was like, I opened up, and it was the first time I said it publicly, and it was a closed group. And he was on me. He was like, you need to tell that story. And I said, Phil, I can't do it yet. I'm just not there. And I'm proud of myself for knowing that I couldn't.
Yeah.
But there's a part of me that was like, maybe Phil was right. But you know, everything in God's time and the universe. And I did it when I could do it, which was when I founded Native Son, I had told my friends, but the only person I hadn't told was my mother. Because I was just like,
Yeah.
this actually co-signs on her original argument. So it's like, and so when I finally told her, that's what she said. She was like, I was always afraid that this would happen to you, but you've taken care of yourself, because, I was explaining what undetectable means and how many years I had been on meds. And a big part of me coming out was dating and feeling shame about literally someone getting up and leaving the table because, like, I'm HIV positive. And they're like, yeah, I can't do that.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, this sucks. And I just got tired of carrying the weight. And also, I felt like I was being judged because of it. So I was like, I don't want to be judged about having a disability, living with a disease that I have to take medication for every single day. And that I can't do anything about now. I have it. And I do think that was also divine intervention of, then how do you turn that into service to the community?
Mm-hmm. I mean, to be doing all of that, to be doing all the work that you were doing at the level that you were, and then to be dealing with the stigma of HIV, right? Because there's a stigma that comes from other people, but the internal stigma that you put on yourself, that we put on ourselves, can be so much more harsh than what anybody else can do to us.
And
that
shame,
is
that shame is, it's crippling, because you will harm yourself to not feel that shame. And, so when we did the very first Native Son Awards 4 years ago, I was like, I have to say this publicly. And I was like really nervous about it, not nervous about coming out because it's a room of Black, gay, and queer men. So I was okay with that. But it was, now I have to tell my mother. And then the part of the story that I always have to tell, the person who supported me in that moment, encouraged me, was Malcolm MJ Harris. Because he had come out through the Oprah tour, and he was like, do it. And I was like, I know, but I mean, I have to do it. But then my mother's been in and out of the hospital. And he was like, my grandfather was in intensive care when I told him, tell her. And I was like, okay, like, let me call you back. And then she was teaching me how to make her famous pumpkin bread. And my aunt had just passed away right before and had cancer and didn't tell anybody. And I was like, perfect. Not perfect, but you know what I mean. Perfect for the purposes of me telling my mother. And she kept bringing it up and bringing it up. So we were baking, and I'd never baked before. And I was like, I've been listening to how upset you are about Aunt Gwen. So I need to tell you something. And then I could say, Black mother, everything stopped. It's like,
the mixing, the turning.
Like everything stopped. It's like, okay. And I told her, but I was, again, like how I came out, using the wisdom that I didn't have then. I was very clear because my mother understood kind of methodical things and process. So I explained to her, when I found out, that I get my blood work done, however many times, twice a year, that I have a really great HIV and infectious disease doctor that all the gays go to in New York, that, that I was undetectable and what that meant. And she was like, and I'm like crying, like I'm like bawling. And she said, well, why didn't you tell me before now? Because this is like 15 years in.
15 years into
being positive.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Yeah.
You know how Black family secrets. So, And I said, I was ashamed because
Mm.
I was ashamed that I let it happen. And I was ashamed to tell you because you had done so much work to become um, a more open, thoughtful,
Mm.
human, loving being about LGBTQI plus people, issues, everything. I would correct her about stuff, and she's like, "Okay, okay, I'm, you know," and I was like, and then this, I was like, "Ugh." And I don't want you to be mad at me the way you were mad at Aunt Gwen.
Mm.
So she was like, okay, I'm going to go into the living room. I need a minute.
Mm.
And
Therapy was working there.
right, right. And then, you know, she loved up on me that weekend. Like my mother had never loved up on me. Like she was hugging me and rubbing me and just wouldn't stop. And that made me feel whole.
Mm-hmm. Oh my gosh. I mean, so I have young boys, they are 6 and 3, and I can literally imagine rubbing on them and
Mm-hmm.
holding them and kissing them and rubbing their heads and
Mm-hmm.
all those things to physically manifest the love, right?
Yes. Yep.
And you know, if I don't have the words to show to tell it, I'm going to physically show you best that I can. Um, that's such, I mean, that's such a big story. That's such a big
Yeah.
experience to have. Um, and, you know, one of the things with HIV that I think is more vicious than the virus itself
Mm-hmm.
is the stigma that comes with it, you
Mm-hmm.
know, and that our society has ingrained in us how to blame and shame ourselves for things that are natural and human. It is
Yep.
never anybody's fault that they have HIV, right? We don't blame people when they get the cold. We don't blame people, you know, if something happens when driving is happening, when, you know, when we're driving, like these are things that happen from just human
Mm-hmm.
nature.
Right.
And the fact that it happens in some communities more means to me, at least, that those are the communities that we love on and, you know, we hug on and rub on even more because that's not okay, right?
Yep.
And our Black same gender loving and Black queer men and Black queer people are so precious and so beautiful to me that it's about kind of loving on folks. But, you know, what are the ways it's easier to say that, right?
Mm.
And that kind of internal work that you have to do to
Yeah.
push through and fight through, particularly that internal stigma, is really hard. I
Yeah.
mean, I would love for you to kind of share a little bit about what that process looked like, because I
Yeah.
know so many folks who are struggling with that. And I mean, we get emails and DMs about people who are living with HIV who are scared. You know, I hear stories still now from people who are, you know, scared to eat with the same plates and other with the,
Oh,
you
yeah.
know, with their family, right? Because they're scared. And that stigma, that internal shame, and sometimes external shame, right? From things they've heard people say, whether it's, you know, people even today that are celebrities talking about HIV and AIDS and
Mm-hmm.
in a derogatory way, that
Mm-hmm.
it impacts how we feel about ourselves and, you know,
Yeah.
what we say to each other. And so what was that process like for you for responding to stigma and really kind of that growth and
Mm.
pushing through and breaking through that shame that you felt internally?
It's a process for sure. And I think that, um, but I think knowledge is power.
Mm-hmm.
And so I am very grateful to be able to ask questions to my doctor um, when I wasn't sure about things, right? So that I can then communicate that out. And I remember I was dating this guy who was younger and he was negative and he was a hypochondriac and he was like terrified of having sex because he's like, I feel like I'm gonna get it. And I was like, so first of all, so you and then you have to change your language and how you communicate with people to be from a place of loving, sharing, and teaching instead of reacting.
Mm.
And so I was very simple with him. I said, I would never do anything to jeopardize your health.
Mm.
And
Mm.
then he was like, no, I know that. And I said, but I understand your concerns are real. And so we have to practice safe sex and we have to explore what that looks like. But I would like you to come to one of my doctor's visits with me.
Okay.
And so we went to my doctor, and I was like, this is fierce, because he was like, how do you explore other ways to have sex that you feel safe? But I want you to read this report that just came out. Emil is what is considered undetectable. It is almost impossible for him to give you the virus. But you need to be aware if you're in relationship with someone who's positive, so that you are not afraid of the love and the relationship. It was a lot. And I think for me, it was, maybe I knew I had this calling, and it was kind of training. I can't stress enough how important therapy was, because we also hold on to trauma. That's a trauma, finding out that you're positive. And we hold on to that trauma. And I know my minister, Pastor Mike Walleran, talks a lot about sometimes in trauma, we get stuck in the like, well, why did it happen to me? And like, what is this? Why did this happen? Instead of being like, this trauma happened. Okay, now how do I move past the trauma? How do I heal? And that is ongoing. I can't say that I'm 100% good. I will say that my therapist and I have been working with him for a really long time. And sometimes that shame seeps up into other things. And I'll be like, oh, that's what that trigger is. I have issues. My weight goes up and down. I think there's issues that like I don't feel sometimes good enough because I'm damaged, right? That I have HIV. And then the other thing is that Native Son has been this huge blessing, because the ability for me to stand in a room or be on this platform and talking about being positive when the CDC says that half of my community is HIV positive or living with AIDS, I'm talking to somebody.
A lot of people.
And
a lot of
people need to hear that I'm okay with it and working through it so that they can. I have friends that are my age. I didn't know that they were positive, and they said they had never told anyone until I publicly came out. And when I came out, the most interesting thing was that people said, you know, you didn't have to do that, right? No one would have ever known. And I said, but I know. And I don't know how you serve a community of Black, gay, and queer men and not be transparent about that.
Yeah, you know, there have been amazing scientific breakthroughs when it comes to HIV. So, you know, you talked about being undetectable, right? So you take your medications and you're, you know, the virus is so low in your body that we can't even see it through tests. And we have PrEP and pre-exposure prophylaxis. So people who are HIV negative can take a pill a day and, you know, ultimately not get HIV. And all those things are amazing. And we've spent millions and millions of dollars on these amazing, you know, scientific breakthroughs. But, you know, what I believe we have to invest in now is this type of stuff, right? How do we make sure that we can respond to stigma? How do we make sure that folks have access to high quality, good, culturally relevant therapy so we can talk to folks about the things that we're going through? That's the type of stuff that we need now to be able to utilize these amazing scientific breakthroughs. All that doesn't matter though if we don't know how to take care of ourselves and work through the traumas that we experience as we navigate life. And, you know, ultimately that some of us experience more than others just because of who we are, how we were born, who we love, and our gender. And so, you know, I think that's such a beautiful story to tell. And I think it is so important for people who are living with HIV to be able to tell their story. You know, Black AIDS Institute, you know, was founded by Phil Wilson, right? Black, gay, out man living with HIV. And, you know, when we look at our staff, you know, making sure that we have staff and leadership within our organization that are people that are living with HIV is critically important to me.
That's right.
Because you have to speak for yourself, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there's such power in being able to share your story.
Right.
I sat on a stage last year and we had two people who were living with HIV talk about their status. And we had somebody come out and talk about their status for the first time in over 30 years. They had never told anybody they were living with HIV for over 30 years
Wow.
until they were in this public space and heard somebody else telling their story. And so I think, you know, the work that you do with Native Son is so important, you know. So it's, you know, the beautiful visuals, but it's also being able to tell the story and then also, you know, creating community. Hold on, wait, I have this, you know, BAI's motto is our people, our problem, our solution.
Yes.
And then on Native Son, you guys talk about our voice, our story, and our power, which I think is so beautiful, you know, which I think really focuses on how we can be stronger together and really united as a community. And I'd love for you, you know, to talk a little more about how you think, you know, our work aligns and how Black people can tangibly support each other.
Yes. So when I first started Native Son and started talking about it, a lot of people, Black, white, gay, straight, Asian, trans, everybody was like, but why just Black, gay, and queer men? And I said, because there's a community of me. And we don't really have community.
Yeah.
And so when God put on my spirit to start this movement that has turned into a platform and a community, I knew that we needed to love on each other and hug on each other and to see each other and to know that in our brokenness that we're still beautiful. To know that we are enough and that we are worthy. And yeah, it's just important to come together and be able to really see each other. Now, as it aligns, so then I said to people, the big vision picture for me is once we create a community where we can heal and support each other and love on each other and are strong, then we go out. Now, we support our Black trans sisters. We support straight Black women. Like, we support other groups, but my focus is Black, gay, and queer men, because when society sees us, they see a Black man. So we got all that too. And then if they find out that we're LGBTQ, it's a whole other situation, because it's hard. And so how do you build people up? How do you give people confidence? I've had young men come to our events and they're scared to come in because they're like, I have had really bad experiences in all Black gay environments. And I was like, that hurts my heart. Like, and I'm like, we have to shift that. And so it got to the point where I would stand by the door. Because if I said, I'm going to hug you when you come in here. And then if you're peeking in the window and you don't feel worthy or you're scared, I'm going to invite you in to know, like, there's no shade up in here. There's no intentional shade. There's no...
it's not on purpose.
No intentional shade.
It's love.
But who we are and all the things that we are, all these bright lights and overly creative and overachievers and super creative and non-conforming is beautiful.
Joseph Beam said, Black men loving Black men is a revolutionary act. And, you know, things are changing in the LGBTQ movement, but ultimately it's been dominated by, you know, white men.
Right.
And I think, you know, as we're talking about Black Lives Matter and, you know, what does that really mean? You know, I think there's a increased focus on, as there should be, an increased focus on increasing invisibility for
Yeah.
Black LGBTQIA plus community.
Yeah.
How much of that responsibility do you think lies within taking up space
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to being given space?
I mean, I just think about Patrice,
Mm-hmm.
Opal, and Alicia
Mm-hmm.
wanting to create opportunities and pipelines for Black gender nonconforming folk who wanted to be on the front lines, who wanted to make a difference, who wanted to fight for freedom, who were shunned because of their sexual identity and orientation. And I know all three of them separately,
Mm-hmm.
and they're the real deal. Like they are
Mm-hmm.
like loving up on you aunties, like,
Yes.
and like
Yes.
I'm gonna be fighting, I'm gonna be hugging you, and I'm gonna be doing a movie and you know, and doing like these amazing reports on disparities for trans people and
Mm-hmm.
just all this stuff that's so brilliant. They show us the way.
Mm-hmm.
You know, a lot of people, I told people in the beginning when I started Native Son, one of the things that was so inspiring me was Black trans women like standing up for themselves and fighting and being beautiful and brilliant at the same time, but reading and not taking stuff and being so on their data and statistics. And I was like, I love us, but why are we at Trappy Hour in the club drunk? Like, come on, y'all. Like, and there's nothing wrong with that,
You need
but
both. You need both. It's
and
it's an and.
so that was something, you know, I look at our ancestors and who stood up and I'm like, we got to do better because, you know, we could let HIV and AIDS just wipe us out and be, you know, drunken at the club. That's not good.
I mean, it's also a beautiful thing, I think, because there's a whole generation we lost, you know, in the 80s and the 90s to HIV and AIDS. You know, I think it's so beautiful today to see the movement and seeing it be led by Black queer folk. I think, you know, I think that really does, you know, speak to, you know, legacy.
Yeah.
It's, you know, ancestors running through folks' veins.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I don't think it's any coincidence
Mm-hmm.
that it's being led by Black LGBTQIA folks. And to me, this movement feels different now because of that, right? That we're talking about true freedom, real freedom for everybody. You know, and, you know, I think, you know, at Black AIDS Institute now, when we talk about HIV, we talk about complete freedom, right? Because some of that stigma and shame that folks feel when it comes to HIV, right? Not going to get tested, not staying on medications or staying in touch with their doctor is because of these systems of oppression, really, that kind of make us think that you are supposed to be this one type of way. When we know that's not real, we know, you know, how beautiful our diversity is. And so, you know, to me, I think that, you know, we talk now about the end of HIV, which is an interesting thing, right? To be able to say, you know, that we have the tools to end HIV within our lifetimes. But, you know, I believe the way we're going to do that is by ensuring that we're building up leadership, that the folks who are leading these efforts and leading our work across the country are the people that are most impacted. And so, you know, being able to have folks like you, right, who as a creative and as an artist can be able to tell your story, right, to inspire other folks, you know, to have the platform that you have, and be able to share your story. I mean, I think it's just so inspiring for folks who are living with HIV, folks who are thinking about PrEP. I saw, you know, I told you it's my first IG Live, so I understand all these little comments, and there's a little question with a notification. Yeah, I'm gonna get better next time. But, you know, somebody was like, you know, what should I do if I'm, you know, we'll work through it.
DM Black AIDS and at DM at Black AIDS with any health questions.
Yes, for sure. If you're looking for testing, if you're looking to be connected, we have groups that are specifically about providing peer support for folks who are living with HIV, particularly for, we have Rev in Color, a program specifically for Black same gender loving men here in Los Angeles, where we're headquartered. Because I think that this type of space, right, having folks like you to be able to tell the story for folks to look up to and say, okay, well, dang, if this is hard for him, it's okay that it's hard for me, and I can work through it, and I can push through it, which I think, is so beautiful.
Yeah, and I think we have to, you mentioned this, but we have to think about the ancestors, and we have to think about, they didn't have all this technology and privilege and luxury that we have. They were like, Marsha P. Johnson was the real deal, right?
The real deal.
And, for James Baldwin to be so brilliant and so provocative and so fierce with his reading of white supremacy and racial inequality and the spaces that he would do it in, that's a warrior. And those are gatekeepers. And we have to think about Audre Lorde, and we have to think about the people, Alvin Ailey, and how he used dance as a form of activism and expression. We have to think about Joseph Beam and Marlon Riggs, and there's just so many people that came before us that held it down. We got this.
There's so many people before us, and there's folks like you that I think folks can look at today and can gain inspiration from. And so, I would love for you to give a message to Black, same gender loving men who are scared to get their HIV test, right? Feeling real concerned, especially during the age of COVID, that are scared to, disclose their status and, are struggling in this space. And, is there some kind of words of advice? You've given us so much kind of goodness, but can you speak directly to them with some, guidance that you would give?
So my first word of advice is knowledge is power. And so knowing is important, because if you know, then if you know you're positive or living with AIDS, then you can work within that to take care of yourself, right? To make sure that you are as healthy as possible. So that is the first part. The second part is this, I think if you go get tested, find out, and then you've got to build a network around you of community who will support you. And they don't all have to be gay. They can be straight women, they can be trans, it can be anybody, though, who is going to support you on your journey, because it is tough. And I told some of my friends, and they were like, I can't even talk to you, because they were like, you're like the fourth person this week to tell me that they're positive, and I can't process that. And that's okay. And wait, the second part of your question, I got lost in my story.
What would you say to folks who are struggling to disclose their HIV status to other folks? So you spoke a little bit to this.
So disclosure is completely personal. I do think it is important, especially in close relationships, loving relationships, sexual relationships. It's just important. And even if you think they know, you need to tell them, because real story, I didn't say something to somebody because I'm like, well, you gotta know, I talk about it all the time. And they were like, yeah, I wasn't clear on that. And I was like, okay. So I think it's just, I think that there's something about sharing it that releases the negativity and shame and fear that you may hold on to.
Absolutely.
And it also gives other people opportunity, right, to expand who they are as a human being.
Yeah. Like you said, disclosing your HIV status is a deeply personal choice. And I don't think that it's right for everybody at every moment. But what we do know, right, we have a huge amount of research and data and just personal experience that support is key. And people can't support you with what they don't know. And so a part of disclosure, I think one of the biggest things, that one of the most important things about telling people your status is nobody's saying, you know, they have to be the amazingness of you and get on a stage and tell a room full of people, you know, their status, but you do have to figure out who are your folks around you, right? That are going to be your support system. And what I would say is when I see people do that, what comes next naturally is how can you support other folks, right? And this kind of larger disclosure usually happens because, you know, you want to, because mostly, right, there's a few Black folks that aren't invited to the cookout, but for the most of us, we love each other, right? And we want to support each other. And so, you know, being able to do that with other folks, I think, is something that we all want to do. And so, you know, disclosure
Agreed.
is
Give people the
huge part of it.
opportunity to show their humanity and love.
And I think for the most part, especially in our community, we do that, right? That we know how precious life is because it's taken from us so regularly. And I think the way we interact with each other, usually, not always, but usually is out of love to support each other. So, okay, so I know, you know, I'm gonna wrap up real quick, but I do want to just talk a little bit more about self-care. Especially in this time of COVID, you know, we're all separated. We about to go into these winter months. You know, I'm in LA, so I know our winter's a little bit different, but it's still cold for us. And, you know, the way, one of the things that we're seeing in research and is really a huge concern around mental health during this period. And, you know, I would love for you to give the folks, before we end off, some tips around self-care, especially during this time of COVID. If you got some specific tips around, you know, how you're going in for testing during this time of COVID, I think it would be great for us to close out with.
So self-care is a real struggle for me.
Is it?
And it is. It really is, because I'm a workaholic and I will take care of everybody else in the village but myself. And so that is something that I am really focused on, and knowing sometimes I just have to shut it down and like, I am not working this weekend. I am like not doing anything. I'm chilling and I am eating pizza and watching movies on Netflix, and I'm not answering the phone, and I'm good. But also back to your original question about the joy, like, what brings me joy? So learning how to cook new vegetarian and fish dishes gives me joy. Moving things around my apartment so my experience is better right now. Really pouring into my friends, reading new books. I just think this is a season of transformation, and let's use it to learn new things so that we come out the other side better, faster, stronger, and more enlightened.
Awesome. I'm so grateful to have had some time to talk to you on a Monday evening. You know, I'm looking forward to continuing to collaborate together on the beautiful space that you have. Thank you for continuously supporting BAI and our work. I don't know if Phil knows how to use Instagram, but I'm gonna make sure he figures out how to come back and watch this.
Uncle Phil.
You know, but I think that also, you know, it's such power in how we can inspire and invoke people towards change. And so I'm grateful to lead an organization that was founded by somebody that, you know, was a part of your journey. And now you can be a part of my journey, and we can be a part of other folks' journey.
That's right.
And I think that's, you know, such a beautiful thing. So thank you for the space that you develop with Native Son. Folks can, of course, contact BAI. If you're looking for services, we have treatment and care services and HIV testing and home HIV test kits at our LA programs. We're doing a lot of national work around building community across the country and really being a part of the effort to end HIV in Black America, which means, you know, supporting each other. It means advocating, acting up for what we deserve, right? And it deserves to be Black folks, Black people who are living with HIV, who are leading this effort across the country and in communities. And so your support, Emil, means so much. And, you know, I'm just grateful for you and the light that you are to so many folks. I love scrolling through my Instagram and seeing the comments in Native Son and seeing all these beautiful Black men supporting each other and lifting folks up. You know, it is, I'm grateful to be able to kind of be a part of that and to see that. So thank you so, so much for spending some time with me.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for serving.
Of course, of course, of course. Thank y'all for joining us for this IG Live. You know, next time I'm gonna have to figure out some new little dance moves to bring to the
Okay.
people.
Look, answer the
Family.
question box. Get
Oh,
jazzy with it.
what, how?
I never use it. I'm sorry. And then I try to like jump in while we're talking, but it's hard. It messes up the stream of conversation. But so grateful for everyone and their comments and participating for sure.
Yes, yes. Thank you guys so much. Have a good rest of your night, and we'll talk soon.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.